Hello everyone, and welcome back to Occult Perspectives. So, I did a little survey to see what you guys were more interested in me posting, and at first, out of the 4 subjects, Freemasonry was ahead, but now Kabbalah and Ceremonial Magic is taking the lead, with Freemasonry in second place, and then left-hand path philosophy and archangels are the third choice. So I figured in this video today, I would do a little bit of both. I'd talk a little bit about Ceremonial Magic, a little bit about Kabbalah, and we'll cover Freemasonry in this video as well. So before we get started, I told some of you in the last video on here that I got a new phone, and my birthday was also yesterday, and my fiance got me a phone stand. So I also now have a nice little stand to use as well. So that will be very helpful. Also, my Patreon is up and running as well. I have like the first 4 chapters of my book uploaded on there on audiobook, in an audiobook format. And I have an instructional video on the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram if you want to go check that out. It's only $5. You're getting a lot of value there for only $5. And I'm going to continue uploading chapters to my book on there as well. Once I get past, I'd say, chapter 8 or 9, because I cover all the parts that I have on there so far. I'm going to do it. The next chapter is going to be on the Tree of Life, where I talk about all the Sephiroth, and then I'm going to do a chapter on the Klipothic tree, and then I'm going to start with going over the symbolism of the Masonic degrees, and we'll start with the Entered Apprentice. I'll do the Fellowcraft, and then I'll do the Master Mason, and then any chapters after that will be on the second tier of the Patreon, which will be $10. And you will get the chapters that include the degrees of Freemasonry after the Master Mason degree. So chapters that discuss the symbolism of the other degrees, the Scottish Rite degrees and the York Rite degrees, as well as chapters on Ceremonial Magic. You know, all the rituals such as the LBRP, the lesser invoking ritual, the pentagram, when to use them, when not to use them, information on archangels, and then getting into more advanced practices such as the LVX, the lesser banishing ritual of the hexagram. And then I'll be covering a few other things as well, but that's pretty much the book in a nutshell. And throughout the whole book, I talk about correspondences between Freemasonry and Ceremonial Magic, how they are not necessarily the same thing, but they utilize the same principles or the same forces in nature. And a lot of the symbolism kind of ties into each other. So there's a lot of like archangelic and Ceremonial Magic influences within Freemasonry, and that's what I cover in my book. Is I get extensive into the symbolism, and no, I don't go over any details of the ritual, because that's not what I seek to teach. You know, that's something that if you want to join the order yourself, or if you want to look up documents, you know, for rituals, most orders, their rituals are online somewhere, so you can pretty much find that if you want to. So if that's something you want to try to seek for yourself, you know, it's an ask and you shall receive type of thing. But I find that a lot of information, it comes to people at the right time. So when you need that particular information, that's when that information will come to you. So I'll put the link to my Patreon in the description of this video. It's in the description of my YouTube channel. I don't think you can actually click on that link, but you'll still see the correct, you know, website address to type in. I wanted to give a shout out to YouTube channel LVX Magic, if you want to go check her out. She does really awesome tarot readings, so wanted to say that as well. So I'm going to read a little bit, I'm going to give you a little bit of sneak peek of my book in this video, part of the next chapter that I'm going to release on the Patreon, which is the Tree of Life chapter, which I break down all the different Sephiroth on there, the corresponding archangels, etc. So I'll read a little bit of that, give you a preview of that. Shout out to my patrons so far. I've got Cory Falcone, I've got Joseph Arthur, I've got Nicholas, and Isaac Mason. So those are my 4 patrons so far. Shout out to you 4. Whoever joins my Patreon, I will list your name in the description of every YouTube video that I do, and I will also give you a personal shout out in the videos, like I just did. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need to cover in the introduction to this video. Might just want to go ahead and jump straight into the subject matter. So yeah, let me go ahead and pull up from my book that I'm writing. You know, and I don't know when this entire book will be done because it's such a grand piece of work. It has a lot to it. So there's an introduction, which is like the prologue basically. Then there's chapter 1, which is my personal story. I talk about my journey with music, how I came into spirituality, and how I eventually joined the Masonic fraternity, and a little bit about my journey through that. So I have a whole chapter dedicated to that, which I'm pretty sure you can preview the first 5 minutes of that chapter on the Patreon for free. So even if you can't afford the Patreon, go ahead and check out the page anyway. You're going to be able to get access to a few samples. Chapter 2 is glossary and terms, so I go ahead and cover a lot of terms that are going to be used in the book. A lot of them are just occult terms in general, or they have to do with Freemasonry, ceremonial magic, all of these different corresponding topics. It's quite a long chapter. I do cover a lot of definitions in that chapter, so you're getting a lot of information condensed in a, not a super long chapter, but you're getting a lot of information kind of crammed into there. And I like to condense information as much as possible. So it's kind of cutting out a lot of like the bullshit and a lot of the extra like riddles and stuff. I know Crowley used to like to do that a lot with his occult works. He would kind of code everything. I don't really do that in my book. I pretty much kind of condense it down to practical, easy to understand ways that, you can apply to your own life, in a very general and practical way. Chapter 3 is the Hermetic Principles. That's the most recent chapter that I have posted on the Patreon. I find that chapter is very valuable. It has the 7 Hermetic Principles summarized, plus the 8th hidden principle, the generative principle. I talk about that. And then chapter 4 is about the Tree of Life. So let me go ahead and skip to the section where I write about the Ein. Lost my spot here. Still on the Hermetic Principle chapter. Go down a little ways. There we go. So this is the section I wrote. I'll just go ahead and read you a little snippet. The Empyrean Heaven, Ein, A-I-N, the first 3 layers of existence above the Tree of Life. Those the 3 layers, the 3 negative veils of existence, as they are sometimes called. The first 3 layers of existence above the Tree of Life are collectively known as the Empyrean Heaven. This consists of the Ein, Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Or. The first layer, called Ein, is commonly understood as the no thing or void. This is slightly misleading. This is, quote, God the Creator, or primordial chaos, darkness, itself, which is totally immutable, and unchangeable. It exists outside the sphere of creation altogether, as something which cannot be comprehended by any but the most holy and high adepts. Even then, it can only be perceived as darkness, because it is at a level of creation we can hardly conceive of. It is rather difficult, if not impossible, to imagine no thing, for there has always been something to us. Further principles of the Ein can be understood by reading The Secret Doctrine. This book takes you through the whole creation process, as stated before, starting with the primordial chaos, or Ein, in the beginning, and works through the various manifold manifestations which lead to our current incarnations and experiences in this realm. The Ein cannot be adequately described by human language, because as soon as an attribute, such as a sacred name, letter, or form is given to it, it no longer represents undifferentiated substance. All things come from it, and it itself never changes. It is the immovable mover. The Ein represents the original state of consciousness in which there is no I at all. Some say this takes place in Hokmah, where the Father and the Son become one. More on this later. It is pure potentiality. It is important to note that in quantum physics, they are discovering that void, or quote empty space, or quote negative potential, or negative matter, carries exponentially more energy than all of the manifested matter in the cosmos. So that's literally just the section that I wrote about the Ein itself. And then I go on to write a little bit about the Ein Sof and about the Ein Sof Or. And then I talk about the original tree of life, where there was no Malkuth. It was originally Yesod, where Malkuth now is. And Thomas Carlson in Kabbalah Klapoth and Goetic Magick goes into that extensively. He talks about the original tree of life. And I don't really know any other books where they really talk about the original tree of life. So that's a very interesting insight to the Kabbalah and the tree of life that you're not going to get from most books. A lot of Kabbalistic books, they really only talk about the tree of life itself, and that's what's a little bit unique about mine. Even though I don't go into any really specifics about left-hand path ideology in my book, I do cover the Klapothic tree to a general degree, each sphere. That way that the practitioner can understand the totality of the whole tree. If you want to really understand the tree of life, you have to understand the flip side of the tree as well. To get a more holistic understanding. So I will go ahead and read Kether to you as well. I've worked on Kether and Hokmah. I'm working through Binah and the rest of the spheres. I am going back into the Tree of Life chapter, and I'm kind of fixing it up a little bit, adding some more parts to it. That way it's more complete before I go ahead and post it on the Patreon. So Kether is the crown of the Tree of Life and symbolized by white. It's also referred to as the fiery heavens, the primum mobile, or the vast countenance. Kether is the monad from which all the other Sephiroth emanate. It's interesting to note that it's also referred to as the primordial point within a circle, the symbolism of which we'll get into later. The divine name of the sphere is Ahih, or Aheye, which means existence, or I am what I shall be. This is significant because it is a god name which is vibrated during the lesser ritual of the pentagram and the middle pillar. It also has significance in certain Masonic degrees. The angelic order for this sphere is and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, the Chath HaKadesh, or Holy Living Creatures. The Holy Living Creatures correspond to the man, Raphael, eagle, Gabriel, lion, Michael, and ox, Uriel. More on this later. And what I mean by that is later on in the book, I'm going to be covering the key symbolism to rituals such as the lesser ritual of the pentagram, including, the 4 sacred animals of Ezekiel's vision, which I just mentioned. When we look at the subject of the demiurge, it is also interesting to note that certain sources refer to Kether as the first as the first cause or demiurgus. I thought that was interesting that Kether is sometimes referred to as the demiurge. We like to think about these things sometimes as being evil, even though it's not God in its most primordial state. It's still an aspect of the divine, and it's still playing its role. It's still playing its role in, helping maintain and create the matrix that we are in. Before the formation of the regular tree of life, there was a failed attempt which led to the creation of the Qlipothic realm. The Qlipoth is a reverse, negative, or quote, evil tree, the complete opposite of the tree of life. While the Qlipoth represents utter separation from divinity, Kether represents quite the opposite, pure unity. Kether is the complete unity of all consciousness before any duality takes place. It is the union of all polarities. And it's important to remember too, Universal Mastery said something which really kind of stuck deep with me, and it's something that I've always kind of intuitively known, that when I said things like, the masculine really resides within the feminine and the feminine resides within the masculine, when you're learning about the opposite, so in the case of somebody working with the dark tree, the Qlipothic tree, they're actually learning about the opposite. They're learning more about the tree of life while working with a Qlipothic tree. So it's weird how when we're working on our sacred masculine, internally on ourselves, or the sacred feminine, in turn, we're really learning about the other one. And that's why these forces are so important to be balanced. You can't have one without the other. You can't have the negative without the positive, etc. Kether can be viewed as the first cosmic swirlings issuing from the primordial chaos and from which all else will spring. Kether is equated with the crown chakra and sometimes the pineal gland or the higher mind within man. The archangel or intelligence presiding over the Sephiroth is Metatron. Metatron wears white robes and stands next to or sits on a crystalline white throne. Metatron is actually said to have been the prophet Enoch spoken of in the book of Enoch, who ascended to heaven and walked with God. The white Sephiroth also has a correspondence with the ascended master Jesus Christ, master of the white flame or light. Similarly, Saint Germain is seen as the master of the purple flame or third eye chakra, psychic intuition, the I am presence. This is a whole other branch of esotericism and New Age teachings which we will not go into further here. There may also be some correlation between the third eye chakra and Da'at, which is a hidden Sephiroth residing in between and slightly below Hokmah and Binah. Some people pronounce it Binah, but I usually have always said Binah. Not sure if one's correct or wrong, per se. So yeah, that's just a couple sections of my book I read there, both from the Tree of Life chapter. So that's just to give you a little taste, a really small taste of the book. And I will, I'll probably actually do some readings even, later on from different sections of the book too. I might do a little bit of reading from the Masonic sections of the book that I'm working on. I'm going to skip down to and see how long my chapter is on the Entered Apprentice degree. So it looks like it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, that chapter, just the Entered Apprentice chapter alone, is almost 20 pages, it looks like. So I really go into detail in the Entered Apprentice chapter. You know what? Let me go ahead and just find a chapter and read it. Even though I haven't really gone back through it and revised it yet, you know what? I'll go ahead and still give you guys a sneak peek of that. I'll just go ahead and read the beginning. Let's see. And the Entered Apprentice degree looks like it's... Skipped it. It's hard to navigate this document sometimes. Okay. Chapter 6. The Entered Apprentice degree. So it's chapter 6, it looks like. The Entered Apprentice degree is the first degree of Blue Lodge Masonry. For convenience sake, we will refer to the entered apprentice as EA. Notice that in the title of the degree itself, we see the words entered and apprentice. A potential candidate for the mysteries of Freemasonry is someone who is, quote, entering upon a particular undertaking and entering into a new stage of life or existence. We find this theme of rebirth, metamorphosis, and transformation heavily incorporated within the archetype of Scorpio. An apprentice is someone who has just embarked upon the journey of their particular craft, whether they be a physical builder, craftsman, speculative mason, philosopher, musician, or even a Jedi. It doesn't matter. What's important is how someone uses the energy generated by these archetypal, geometric, ceremonial, ritualistic, and dramatic methods in order to positively build their environment and the world around them. Learning to become a servant of our highest selves, the parent of all, supreme oneness, in order to serve and tend to the garden of humanity as best we can, is the ultimate goal we can achieve here while on Earth. And that's just chapter 1. I'm going to go ahead and read 2 more paragraphs for you. I'm sorry, that's the first paragraph of this chapter, of chapter 6. I'm going to read 2 more paragraphs. And the beginning of this, the whole Masonic journey, it could be likened to the Fool tarot card too. The Fool and then the Magician. The Magician, see, Mason and Magician, they're kind of like similar words. They kind of have similar meanings. The Magician being a more ancient, I would say even more ancient archetype than the physical builder itself, if we're really getting into ancient stuff. But there have always been physical builders, whether that be with advanced technology such as back in the days of Atlantis and all of that. That's getting into a whole different subject. I tend to just sip on my coffee so slowly. Sometimes I got to make sure I drink it before it gets too cold. Could always heat it back up, but I want to enjoy it while it's fresh. I would like to mention that for the next few chapters, EA, FC, which is Fellowcraft, and MM, Master Mason, I will be heavily referencing a basic Masonic education course for entered apprentices with questions and answers, which should easily be found on the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Ohio website. I'm pretty sure it's still on there. I'd have to do some digging. One often hears the terms free and accepted when learning about Freemasonry. In the days of the operative architects, they were, quote, free to travel and live their lives in accordance with their work. They were not constrained to staying in one place, since their talents were needed elsewhere. During the Middle Ages in England, this was rare. Most workers were bound to the owners of the land on which they worked. This occupational freedom for operative Masons can be traced back to the year 946 in York, England. That's probably where York Rite comes from York, England. The word accepted refers to an influx of Masons who were not operative builders but typically involved in the, quote, higher echelons of society and wanted to be admitted to the craft. Some of those who asked to be admitted were men whom the operative craftsmen worked for. As secrets of the building trade became more widespread, architecture changed and membership declined. This transition to becoming a speculative craft helped Freemasonry survive. The first official Grand Lodge was formed in London, England, at the Goose and Gridiron, I think it's pronounced Gridiron, in London, England, at the Goose and Gridiron Tavern in 1717. To make the distinction between the ancient core teachings themselves, Hermetic Principles in whatever form they may have manifested across the span of years, and modern Freemasonry, there are roughly 3 main influences which have helped it evolve into what it is today. The 3 main influences include the original Mystery School initiatic current, which has made its way from pre-ancient Atlantis to modern times, the history of the medieval stone guilds, and the connection with King Solomon's Temple and the Knights Templar. So there you go. That's pretty much the first page from the chapter, the Entered Apprentice degree. And that's, as you can tell in that chapter, I haven't even gotten into the ritual symbolism itself. So yeah, guys, I just wanted to share some of my book with you. Maybe kind of incite you just a little bit more to go and check out my Patreon and support me on there if you can, it only being $5. And I think what I'm going to do for the rest of this video, I might go ahead and do one more video today. We'll see how it goes. But as you can see, here's Morals and Dogma, and there's all these different marks in the book. There's a lot of beautiful passages in this book. And some of the passages have been really inspiring to me. They've were able to help me through some rough moments internally that I was having with myself. And it was able to remind me of my own inner strength. And that's really what true Freemasonry should be about. It's about building strength of character. So it's realizing that the God resides within the temple being your body, the temple being yourself, the temple being your mind. And you have to properly tend to the temple and care for yourself and love for yourself, but also remember how strong you are and the duties that you do have in this life. We all have family, we all have friends, we all have, whatever it is we do to make, earn a living, all of these things, we all have different responsibilities. And it's really strength of character that enables us to walk through these different obstacles or trials in life with strength. And if we have a good, foothold on our emotions, and we learn how to channel our powers in a productive and an emotionally balanced way, we can really be an example to other people, to show them, look, there is a way. There is not being an escapist, not saying, oh, I'm like searching for a way out, I'm not trying to escape the prison of the physical world. It's not like that so much. We can be these strong conduits of the spirit, walking and doing the great work here in the material world right now. So I'm going to go ahead and it's going to take me a second to find some of these passages on the pages that I marked, because I did mark the pages, but I did not mark where exactly on the page the section that I wanted to read from is. So I'm going to have to look and read for a second to find the paragraphs that I'm looking for. So this section, if you have watched my Morals and Dogma playlist, you've probably already seen me cover this. Probably the first couple sections that I'm going to read from, but it's still really beautiful anyway. Here we were just talking about this. Know ye not, says the Apostle Paul, that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man desecrate the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. The wisdom and power of the deity are in equilibrium. The laws of nature and the moral laws are not the mere despotic mandates of his omnipotent will. Basically saying he's not just being Source isn't just trying to be a tyrant. For then they might be changed by him, and order become disorder, and good and right become evil and wrong, honesty and loyalty, vices, and fraud, ingratitude, and vice, virtues. Omnipotent power, infinite and existing alone, would necessarily not be constrained to consistency. Its decrees and laws could not be immutable. The laws of God are not obligatory on us because they are the enactments of his power, or the expression of his will, but because they express his infinite wisdom. So let me read that again. And this is really all code for getting into alignment with natural law. It's saying that the laws are not there because the laws are there because of wisdom being in place. There's a reason that things are set up the way they're set up. They're not set up just to be arbitrary, is what they're saying. So let me read that again. Its decrees and laws could not be omnipotent power, infinite and existing alone would necessarily not be constrained to consistency. Its decrees and laws could not be immutable. The laws of God are not obligatory on us because they're the enactments of his power or the expression of his will, but because they express his infinite wisdom. They are not right because they are his laws, but his laws because they are right. From the equilibrium of infinite wisdom and infinite force results perfect harmony in physics and in the moral universe. Wisdom, power, and harmony constitute one Masonic triad. They have other and profounder meanings that may at some time be unveiled to you. As to the ordinary and commonplace explanation, it may be added that the wisdom of the architect is displayed in combining as only a skillful architect can do, and as God has done everywhere, for example, in the tree, the human frame, the egg, the cells of the honeycomb, strength with grace, beauty, symmetry, proportion, lightness, ornamentation. That, too, is the perfection of the orator and poet, to combine force, strength, energy with grace, style, musical cadences, the beauty of figures, the play and irradiation of imagination and fancy, and so on, in a state, the warlike and industrial force of the people and their titanic strength must be combined with the beauty of the arts and sciences and the intellect, if the state would scale the heights of excellence and the people be really free. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing a balancing out of forces. You're seeing the pillar of severity on one side as the wars and all that, and then the arts and sciences you're seeing more on the pillar of, that's more the pillar of mercy, especially spheres like Netzach. Netzach is where the emotions play out, and a lot of the arts and music, that corresponds to that sphere, to Netzach. Harmony in this, as in all the divine, the material, and the human, is the result of equilibrium, of the sympathy and opposite action of contraries. A single wisdom above them holding the beams of the scales. So you've got like the supernal triad. There's always the one above the two, unity above the duality. To reconcile the moral law, human responsibility, free will, and the absolute power of God, and the existence of evil with his absolute wisdom and goodness and mercy, these are the great enigmas of the Sphinx. So sometimes you have to think about it like a mathematical formula too. There has to be an equaling out on both sides of the equation, negative, positive polarities. A lot of this stuff should be ringing a bell. If you watch my channel, you know, if you watch other esoteric channels and what they are trying to teach. Let's see what else we've got here. Moving on to the second chapter. Do not expect easily to convince men of the truth, or to lead them to think aright. The subtle human intellect can weave its mists over even the clearest vision. Remember that it is eccentric enough to ask unanimity. Wow, that's hard. Unanimity from a jury, basically a unanimous decision. But to ask it from any large number of men on any point of political faith is amazing. You can hardly get two men in any congress or convention to agree. Nay, you can rarely get one to agree with himself. The political church, which chances to be supreme anywhere, has an indefinite number of tongues. How then can we expect men to agree as to matters beyond the cognizance of the senses? How can we compass the infinite and the invisible with any chain of evidence? Ask the small sea waves what they murmur among the pebbles. How many of those words that come from the invisible shore are lost, like the birds in the long passage? How vainly do we strain the eyes across the long infinite? We must be content as the children are with the pebbles that have with the pebbles that have been stranded, since it is forbidden us to explore the hidden depths. There are ways to explore the hidden depths, but you got to be careful when you do explore those depths. Just get into it, knowing what you're getting into, I guess I should say. But there's always going to be things that are kept from our view until we are in the same vibration or frequency as our highest self. So we're here to have a physical experience. We're meant to forget certain things. We're not supposed to remember everything right now, so that we can have this particular experience that we're having. McDonald's makes a killer vanilla latte, by the way. If you've never had McDonald's vanilla latte, I highly recommend you try it out. It's even better than Starbucks, in my opinion. And cheaper. All right. I think that was all I wanted to read from that page. So I'll just go ahead and read this whole section. This section is really talking about, there's a lot of beauty in just, plain old work. And even Crowley talked about this a lot. So anyone who's, being productive in any way that is, like even me as, what I do for my day job is I work at Kroger. So I'm just, a grocer, but it's still an integral part of the community. It gets people their food. It's a function that has to be performed. So basically what he's saying in all aspects of work, whatever, however small or insignificant it may seem, it really makes a much larger effect at the end of the day. So let me go ahead and read this section. Alexander of Macedon has left a saying behind him which has survived his conquests. Nothing is nobler than work. Work only can keep even kings respectable. And when a king is a king indeed, it is an honorable office to give tone to the manners and morals of a nation, to set the example of virtuous conduct and restore in spirit the old schools of chivalry, in which the young manhood may be nurtured to real greatness. Work and wages will go together in men's minds in the most royal institutions. We must ever come to the idea of real work. The great work is really the raising of human consciousness on this planet for those who are ready to take that next step. It's like having a Hogwarts in real life. I think we're at the stage of human evolution or development where people are really ready for that. They want to be of service to humanity in a way that actually helps the evolution of mankind. Isn't just keeping them stagnant and working like slaves in the cycle that humanity is currently in. And if humanity does not choose to change this soon, there have to be more people that wake up. There's going to be, some severe consequences for those who just consciously choose to stay asleep, especially once they've already been given an opportunity to, kind of wake up and really realize what's going on. That's just how the divine works. So Everyone is where they're at, of course, but you can only live in ignorance for so long. People can really only be stupid for so long. The rest that follows labor should be sweeter than the rest which follows rest. Let no fellowcraft imagine that the work of the lowly and uninfluential is not worth the doing. There is no legal limit to the possible influences of a good deed or a wise word or a generous effort. Nothing is really small. Whoever is open to the deep penetration of nature knows this. Although indeed no absolute satisfaction may be vouchsafed to philosophy, any more in circumscribing the cause than in limiting the effect, the man of thought and contemplation falls into unfathomable ecstasies in view of all the decompositions of forces resulting in unity. All works for all. Destruction is not annihilation, but in fact regeneration. Right? The phoenix rising up from the ashes. So they're saying even though no absolute satisfaction comes from philosophy, any more than circumscribing the cause than in limiting the effect, so understanding cause and effects, the man of thought and contemplation can fall into unfathomable ecstasies in the view of all the decompositions of forces resulting in unity. So anyone who's had like a truly mystical experience where everything like kind of dissolves into a complete unity, you're able to see like the cause and effects of all things. You become that, and you're in that state where you do realize that it is all connected. And when you've been in that space where it's like Kether type consciousness, you're starting to get into like the Empyrean heaven almost awareness. There is an ecstasy to that. You start discovering the astral temples. You start communing with, the hidden chiefs and the secret masters that are watching over this world. Their wisdom starts to become your wisdom. You start to really work up a deeper spiritual connection to things, and there really is a treasure trove. There really is the benefits from understanding and studying this information is like the treasure itself. And a lot of people, they just keep on seeking and seeking and seeking, but they're not really able to, it's like they're not able to reap the benefits of the fruit, so to speak, and taste the nectar from the wisdom. How can I apply this to my everyday life? How can I use this to see, the whole puzzle piece of existence in its totality? How can I see the bigger picture, so to speak? How can I learn to see the beauty in the present moment, the beauty of it all? There's been some really dark and, just not so pretty things that have happened, even to people I know, even in my own life. But from those roots, from that dirt, it brings way, and it's able to give birth actually from the reconciling of forces to that which is beautiful. So remember that for there to be the beauty, for there to be the foundation for one person to be able to have a successful and a happy life. Sometimes it takes it takes an equation of other forces to come into play for that to be able to even be a possibility. Algebra applies to the clouds. The radiance of the star benefits the rose. No thinker would dare to say that the perfume of the hawthorn is useless to the constellations. Who then can calculate the path of the molecule? How do we know that the creation of worlds are not determined by the fall of grains of sand? Who then understands the reciprocal flow and ebb of the infinitely great and the infinitely small, the echoing of causes in the abysses of beginning and the avalanches of creation? A fleshworm is of account, the small is great, the great is small. All is in equilibrium, in necessity. There are marvelous relations between beings and things. In this inexhaustible hole, from sun to grub, there is no scorn. All need each other. Light does not carry terrestrial perfumes into the azure depths without knowing what it does with them. Night distributes the stellar essence to the sleeping plants. Every bird which flies has the thread of the infinite in its claw. And I actually had an experience once where I was watching these birds one day, and it was just like I could see the universe of everything within the activity of that bird. You know, the bird was pecking at the ground, eating these worms or food, and then those worms, I was able to like imagine what their world was like. And it's like all these microscopic, microcosmic worlds that exist within our quote macrocosmic world, and we're just the microcosm to another macrocosm. So the lens, it's like the microscope lens just keeps on pulling out. It's when you like look into a kaleidoscope. Who was it? Elton John talks about the kaleidoscope in the lyrics of "Can You Feel the Love Tonight." I can't remember offhand what the lyrics are to that part without singing the whole song, but you get the point. Every bird which flies has the thread of the infinite in its claw. Germination includes the hatching of a meteor and the tap of a swallow's bill breaking the egg. And it leads forward the birth of an earthworm and the advent of a Socrates. Where the telescope ends, the microscope begins. Which of them the grander view? A bit of mold is a pleiade of flowers, a nebula is an anthill of stars. Yeah, basically it just goes on to, more beautiful poetry and symbolism about how everything, from the zodiac to every small act on Earth, the cosmos, essentially that it's all connected. Let's see what other sections I have. There's a lot of different bookmarks I have put in here. This was a little section that kind of helped me with some anger that I had at one point. Sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all. And as long as you are following your path, your higher path, or your higher purpose, and other people try to get in the way of that, it's only going to hurt them in the end, because they're trying to interfere with your true will. And the universe, doesn't like that. Now, to say you were to go around messing with someone else's true will, that would come back on you really bad as well. It is natural when we are wronged to desire revenge and to persuade ourselves that we desire it less for our own satisfaction than to prevent a repetition of the wrong, to which the doer would be encouraged by immunity coupled with the profit of the wrong. So he's saying it's natural to desire revenge, and we often we try to persuade ourselves that it's not for our own satisfaction, but to prevent the repetition of a wrong. To submit to be cheated is to encourage the cheater to continue, and we are quite apt to regard ourselves as God's chosen instruments to inflict his vengeance, and for him, and in his stead, to discourage wrong by making it fruitless and its punishment sure. Revenge has been said to be a kind of wild justice, but it is always taken in anger and therefore is unworthy of a great soul. which ought not to suffer its equanimity, that is a hard word to say, equanimity, to be disturbed by ingratitude or villainy. The injuries done us by the base are as much unworthy of our anger. The injuries done us by the base are as much unworthy of our angry notice as those done us by the insects and the beasts. And when we crush the adder or slay the wolf or the hyena, we should do it without being moved to anger, and with no more feelings of revenge than we have in rooting up a noxious weed. So I liked that. And if it be not in human nature not to take revenge by way of punishment, let the Mason truly consider that in doing so he is God's agent. And so let his revenge be measured by justice and tempered by mercy. The law of God is that the consequences of wrong and cruelty and crime shall be their punishment, and the injured and the wronged and the indignant are as much his instruments to enforce that law as the diseases and public detestation and the verdict of history and the execration of posterity are. So yeah, Masonry is always a philosophy of, it's all about tolerance and mercy. We always want to be as tolerant and as understanding of others as possible. We don't really know what it's like to walk in another's shoes. So do we know that we could have avoided the temptation ourselves? Maybe not. Maybe we would have done no better. So in the end, all of the involved party is used by source to teach the lesson, basically, is what he's saying there. I'm not sure how many more of these sections I'm going to read because this is already a really long video. I'm already at 52 minutes, so maybe I'll do one more section and then I'll go ahead and wrap up this video. And if you want to hear any of the other beautiful excerpts from Morals and Dogma that I've handpicked out, I can do that in another video. Or I can go back, if you guys want, and just continue the Morals and Dogma playlist itself. I think we were almost done with chapter 2 in the playlist. So I go through the book very slowly and page by page in my Morals and Dogma playlist, and pretty much I'm working through the whole book on that. And I think that's one of my most viewed videos, actually, is the first Morals and Dogma video that I posted. That was probably 2 years ago, or even more at this point now. Back close to when I first started my channel. Here, I'll read this little paragraph here. Humanity has never really had but one religion and one worship. This universal light has had its uncertain mirages, its deceitful reflections and its shadows, but always after the nights of error we see it reappear one and pure like the sun. So that's one of the things with Freemasonry, is it only requires a belief in a higher power, and whatever the nature of your deity or however you want to view God or source, that's really up to each individual person, and that's really what makes Freemasonry unique and really cool, in my opinion, as opposed to religious dogma. But for somebody who is religious, it actually works as it's a really good thing to have. It's Freemasonry is the handmaiden in a sense to religion. If you are a religious person, Freemasonry is only going to make you a stronger whatever it is that you are, a better Christian, you know, a better follower of the Jewish faith, because it teaches universal concepts in its degrees that's open to basically all of the religions or teachings. I'm actually not seeing what I wanted to... Maybe that was the only part I wanted to read on that page. Oh, we're at Secret Master now. So this is from chapter 4 here. Secret Master, it's the first degree in Scottish Rite after the Master Mason degree, so it'd be the 4th degree. A few rudimentary lessons in architecture, a few universally admitted maxims of morality, a few unimportant traditions whose real meaning is unknown or misunderstood will no longer satisfy the earnest inquirer after Masonic truth. Let whoso is content with these seek to climb no higher. He who desires to understand the harmonious and beautiful proportions of Freemasonry must read, study, reflect, digest, and discriminate the knowledge, that is. The true Mason is an ardent seeker after knowledge, and he knows that both books and the antique symbols of Masonry are vessels which come down to us full freighted with the intellectual riches of the past, and that in the landing of these argosies is much that sheds light on the history of Masonry and proves its claim to be acknowledged the benefactor of mankind, born in the very cradle of the race. Knowledge is the most genuine and real of human treasures, for it is light as ignorance is darkness. It is the development of the human soul and its acquisition, the growth of the soul, which at the birth of man knows nothing, and therefore in one sense may be said to be nothing. It is the seed which has in it the power to grow, to acquire, and by acquiring to be developed as the seed is developed into the shoot, the plant, the tree. We need not posit the common argument that by learning man excelleth man, and that wherein man excelleth beasts, that by learning man ascendeth to the heavens and their motions, wherein body he cannot become, and the like. Let us rather regard the dignity and excellency of knowledge and learning in that whereunto man's nature doth most aspire, which is immortality or continuance. For to this tendeth generation and raising of the houses and families, to this buildings, foundations, and monuments. To this tendeth the desire of memory, fame, and celebration, and in effect the strength of all other human desires, that our influences shall survive us and be living forces when we are in our graves, and not merely that our names shall be remembered, but rather that our work shall be read, our acts spoken of, our names recollected, and mentioned when we are dead, as evidences that those influences live and rule, sway, and control some portion of mankind and of the world. This is the aspiration of the human soul. We see then how far the monuments of genius and learning are more durable than monuments of power or of the hands. So basically, he's just talking there about leaving a mark on the world, and that should really be one of the aspirations of anybody who's really involved in the great work. You know, every act of kindness, every good deed, you know, has its continuance, and just work in general, as we were saying before, has its it's gonna have, you know, correspondences in helping the world grow. But if you can actually like leave something tangible for future generations, even just knowledge, as all of this knowledge is archived, it's like, think of it as like a universal book of Akasha that you can access at any time. And once you get into the streamline of this, we could call it a magical current. You know, the ceremonial magic current and the Masonic current are not exactly the same, but they are very similar. And once you're a part of the current, the spirit, you know, will start internally communicating with you, which is ultimately your own higher self. Remember that spirits and all these beings and the angels and all of this, it's not really separate from you. It's all a part of you, but it's different aspects of yourself through the facet of the universe, you know, communicating things to you. So, all right, everyone, I think that's a pretty good video talking about a little bit of ceremonial magic. We got into some Tree of Life stuff. We got into some quotes, some beautiful quotes from Morals and Dogma, and I have much more. You know, some of these other quotes later on that I didn't really cover in this video were some of the ones that like were some of the quotes that really helped me through some darker times, for sure. When I just had like a lot on my plate, and things were starting to feel, the pressure was starting to, you know, I was starting to feel that. But remember that the black diamond is formed under pressure. So a diamond is formed under pressure, and sometimes it's those resistances which are the ultimate opportunity for character building, you know, is there in those experiences. So I also forgot to introduce myself at the beginning of this video. My name is Tyler Smith, and what I do on this channel, Occult Perspectives, is I break down different esoteric and occult subjects so you can understand them in a practical way, and so you can apply them towards your spiritual teachings and your spiritual path, whatever that spiritual path may be, because they're all valid in their own way. So, and I really recommend that people follow what feels right to you, follow which tradition feels right to you. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do or what not to do. I'm just here to share my insights, and you know, hopefully you'll be able to take that into your own teachings, and it'll have some kind of beneficial effect for you. Hopefully you gain some kind of value from this, these types of videos and this information. So I will go ahead and end the video there. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to ring the notification bell if you want to be notified of new videos, and please go and check out my Patreon, which is also called Occult Perspectives. I'll leave the link for that below in the description. So thank you once again, all of you, and may you have a awesome, peaceful, blessed day wherever you are, whether it be day or night. So thank you, everyone, and until next time.